Hi, it's Jean Gunderson again, and this is part 2 of my presentation about the science of reading in March of 2022. I want to reiterate that I am giving this presentation only on behalf of myself and not on behalf of my school district or any Facebook group that I'm involved with. I put this presentation together to give information to South Dakota educators and anybody else who'd like to access the information that can help them understand the science of reading and how to apply it in their classrooms. If you watched the first part of the presentation and you thought, this is actually the opposite of what I learned is good instruction. I learned that good instruction is actually something else. My response to that is, I know, right? I know. I just got done reading E.D. Hirsch's book, The Schools We Need and Why We Don't Have Them, 1996. I did not know about any of this until recently. I am more than halfway through my career, and I have only recently learned about evidence-based instruction, about the science of reading, how to best help kids with reading problems, how we know it's true from the brain scans and other research, and all of those things. So if this is a paradigm shift for you, understand that it also was for me, and I don't want you to have to go through all of the many hours of research that I did. I just want to share some information with you so that you can access what will be helpful to you. All right, so I said I would tell you some practical applications. We will get there after one extra slide. Here it is. Results. Does it make you bristle when I say that word? Do you think, oh, she should be looking at the whole child, and here she is just looking at a bunch of numbers? Well, let me tell you that I am interested very much in the whole child and kids' affective as well as academic development. I am disturbed by a lot of what I've seen recently with teachers saying that because of COVID or because students have high ACEs scores, we don't need to worry about academics. I definitely recommend that you access the work of Dr. Steve Dykstra, available for free on YouTube, and how he talks about how not learning how to read well re-traumatizes students who already have experienced trauma, and how learning how to read can be a mitigating circumstance to help them overcome what they've dealt with trauma. We definitely want to make sure that we get our students as far as they can in as readers. This slide right here is a current results slide from third quarter, the end of third quarter, so a few weeks ago, and it shows how title students from one class, so one group of title students that I worked with, how they did on the end of a year test. So at the beginning of the year, if you look at the second column, you'll see a student, and I told her some that has all blues and greens, so all above or at level. At the beginning of the year, I told her adults that this probably would be the year that she would be referred to special ed for reading. And instead, at the end of third quarter, she went back into the regular classroom. So it went completely the opposite of what was expected and what I have seen in the past. And those are the kinds of results that you can get if your district implements an evidence-based program in Tier 1 and also for Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. Administrator Shawn Joseph says, no district ever remediates itself into excellence. There must be a focus on first instruction, on getting it right the first time. So we want most of our students to be able to learn how to read at or above level with just the Tier 1 classroom instruction. So we need to make sure that we have a very strong program. Something that you should know is that you are not being sent the most effective Tier 1 classroom instruction curriculum programs. Investigate evidence-based programs. So I check the Science of Reading Facebook groups almost every day, and I've noticed that the Science of Reading is getting more and more diluted as more products are slapping it on. They're slapping Science of Reading on their products. And for example, today I was reading something that said that they were down to 2 programs for their district, 2 finalists for adoption for next year, and they both say that they're aligned to the Science of Reading. So who has experience with these, and what do you think? Well, I looked at the names of the program. Neither one of them is an evidence-based program that would be recommended by folks who know how the brain learns how to read, but they have both slapped Science of Reading onto their programs. So please be very discerning when looking into programs that are that you're going to be using to teach reading. Another thing that happened recently is one of the programs that's not aligned to how we know the brain learns how to read sent out a flyer that said that their program shows strong evidence that it works. But if you look at what the research says, it actually says that their program, there's strong evidence that it has a low effect size. So basically there's strong evidence that it doesn't work. So it's very confusing out there. So you need to really look into these programs. Now, I would like to be our state's expert in Tier 1 and intervention programs. So please tell me what you've used, what has worked for your students, and what has not, because I would like to know all of that information, because when people ask me about different programs, I want to give them all of the information that I know so that they can make the best decision for the learners in their districts. Here are some programs that are known to be evidence-based. No program is perfect. Yes, teachers teach students, and programs are helpful for that though. In fact, I worked many years developing my own evidence-based program for teaching kids, and this year when we bought a box program, the kids did better than they had, even though I had a lot of knowledge about systematic explicit instruction. So some highly recommended programs, and please contact me if you have any questions about specific ones. I could go into each of these for quite a while. Open Court, CKLA, Wit and Wisdom with geodes, which are the readers, and Foundations, which is the intervention program, excuse me. Collaborative Classroom with SIPs as the intervention. Super Kids. Dr. Steve Dykstra recommends that we embrace a really good cookie cutter. Let's get a really good program into our Tier 1 instruction so that we can reach most of the readers. And then we need to allow adequate time for evidence-based instruction for those who need it. Again, allow adequate time for evidence-based instruction for those who need it. Evidence-based, excuse me, intervention for those who need it. Now, the original RTI studies for Tier 3, those kids were getting 2 hours of daily intervention, 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the afternoon. 2 hours daily for Tier 3 in the original RTI studies. 15 minutes here and 15 minutes there is just not going to cut it for a lot of kids. Some kids their brains need 20 times the exposures to the spelling patterns and words than kids who get it right away. So what if your curriculum is not up for adoption? You have to deal with the curriculum you have. Well, first of all, find the Science of Reading in your current curriculum. So for example, there was a Journey Science of Reading Facebook group. For us, when we had Journeys, the saving grace of Journeys was that it had actually a really good scope and sequence and decodables in first grade. So look for those Science of Reading aligned pieces of the curriculum and use them. Use supplemental materials such as or some of these Orton Gillingham based programs. Now VOAC, I have to give a shout out, that's from South Dakota. They were ahead of their time. Vowels are very good guideposts in words, and they built the instruction around the vowels. So when I've seen that program implemented with fidelity and in a different state, and those kids had really good results. The biggest complaint I hear about VOAC is that it's older and there must be something newer and better. We learned to read with VOAC, so that's not how we should teach the kids to read, but the point is you did learn to read. So we want to make sure that we use something that works, such as that program, Really Great Reading, Sunday, Wilson Foundation, SIPS, Barton, Spire, they would be in this list. There's a lot of supplemental programs that you can use. If you have questions about specific programs, please let me know. And if you want to share what has worked, please let me know. So anyway, you could use these supplemental materials, and you can use online resources, software, such as MindPlay, Lexia, Nessie, etc. The Measured Mom has put together a guide to decodable books. She bought them all, read them, and gave her recommendations. So if you are wanting to buy some decodable readers to add to your curriculum, you could access that link. What if you have a very small or no budget? That's what I had for the first 5 years. So I put together something that was decent, but is nowhere near as good, honestly, as the program that we have now, which just has, it's just very artfully put together, in my opinion. And I think that a lot of these programs are very well put together. For example, I teach 8 to 10 lessons a day, and one of the lessons has just many, many parts with many, many words that I would not be able to think up every night for every lesson. So if you have a very small or no budget, though, here's what I did. I had fluency sheets that were made from PowerPoint, just in a grid, and those had the phonics patterns or words with the phonics patterns on them. And then I had a tic-tac-toe board, and I had the kids just playing tic-tac-toe with little markers, like tiles, and so that we weren't marking up the board, and that kept it going pretty fast, just reading a line as kind of a warm-up kind of a thing. The Florida Center for Reading Research has skill games that you can put in your centers, or you could play with small groups. They have everything from basic phonological awareness all the way up to advanced vocabulary, all free online. And then there are some free decodable readers online, free except for the cost of paper. CKLA is what I recommend at that link there, and I have used those before I had a curriculum, and they are very high quality. For example, in the first grade decodable readers, the first one, Snapshots, starts out with short vowel patterns, digraphs, and blends, and they go to the UK. So the kids are learning all of this information about the UK while they're reading words that they can decode. By book 7, they go to Mexico. They're learning about the Aztecs, Mexican Independence Day, all sorts of things while they are reading text that they can access. For some cost, you can get a subscription to Reading A to Z. That's about $115 a year, and that will give you access to a lot of things you can print out as far as decodable readers, leveled text, Reader's Theater, those kinds of things. There are also companies who publish high interest, low readability books. So the books might be at first, second grade readability. They'll tell you what their readability is, but they are more respectful for our older learners than some of the more juvenile books. So High Noon, Saddleback are two of those companies. I will tell you that I purchased the High Noon first grade readability books, and the special ed teacher purchased the Saddleback first grade readability books, and we found the Saddleback books to be more high interest to older students, such as junior high and high school, and those Saddleback ones I know have been recommended by Title III in the past for our emergent bilinguals. And the High Noon books were a little bit lower age level interest. I think they would be also appropriate for junior high and high school, but they were more accessible for my second and third grade students. I had the first grade readability for second and third grade students. What about students with language acquisition plans? Well, you definitely want to access the resources of Title III here in South Dakota, such as their Facebook page, their listserv, and other resources. For example, Jean Larson has a presentation about how to differentiate a language difference from a language disability. There are also books that you can access for students with language acquisition plans, such as Literacy Foundations for English Learners. There's also on YouTube book study, chapter by chapter book study of that book. Remember, all brains learn to read the same way, but there are also different things that we may be looking at with certain learners, such as students with language acquisition plans and students with IEPs. My experience, I have the past 5 years, I've taught all over the place, but I've had the past 5 years been in title reading, and we had journeys and no intervention curriculum. We worked very hard. We implemented the tier 1 with fidelity and worked very hard to implement systematic explicit instruction in interventions because we knew about that. We had been trained, thanks to the state, on the teaching reading source book. So we were on the right track, but our tier 1 curriculum was holding us back. This year, we have collaborative classroom, and we have SIPs and mind play. I did in 2nd grade at the beginning of this school year. I took some of the 2nd graders and put them in SIPs with me. Some of the 2nd graders and put them on mind play, where I was in the room, but they were working on software. And then some of the kids were on both. And the link on the bottom tells you what happened. Long story short, mind play had really good results. They were comparable to the SIPs kids. But I did choose to stick with SIPs because that's what our school has adopted. So that's what they would get each year. So it just made sense to stick with the thing that I already owned rather than to pay for the software licenses when I had 2 high quality things to choose from. Interestingly, I asked the 2nd graders who are on both which one they preferred, and they could not decide. They liked different things about mind play and about SIPs. So I am in a district that is very, very forward thinking with reading instruction. The administrators and the school board, they had us, we could opt into a cohort where we all got our English as a new language endorsements. We have been looking at what is going to be best for our learners, and the higher ups have been very open to working with us for the benefit of our learners, for adopting curriculum and things like that. So I do very much appreciate my district and the time that they give me to give intervention to the students. I feel very strongly that I have the amount of time that each student needs to get the intervention that they need in order to progress their skills. But I will say that having a curriculum that helps you out with that is very helpful. Okay, so that's some information about curriculum, etc. Here is some information about what you might want to do to learn more about the science of reading. So you're just beginning with this, and here's some free next steps for you. First, you can click on the links in this presentation. You should also listen to Emily Hanford's American Public Media podcasts. There are 4 of them with accompanying articles. And the one that helps us practitioners the most is At a Loss for Words, talking about reading instruction. The Measured Mom has many good materials. You probably or maybe have accessed something from her site before. I found out that her husband and my husband actually went to college and seminary together, but she and I did not know each other until recently, when we got together over the science of reading. She is somebody who had a lot of knowledge about reading, and then learned that she did not have access to the full body of evidence about how the brain learns to read. She did get access to that and has changed how she is recommending that reading be taught, and has changed her resources. So if you're somebody going through a paradigm shift, she's somebody to touch base with. And for everybody, you could definitely access her materials and her podcasts. Reading Rockets, I could watch Linda Farrell work with readers all day long. She has those videos on Reading Rockets. There is a Reading 101 course that's free. It's a series of modules. I've told many people about it, but I've never heard back from anybody who has taken that course. So if you take the Reading 101 course from Reading Rockets, please let me know what you thought of it. Join the Science of Reading Facebook group here in South Dakota and see what we've got going on in our great state. And then join the international group, which is our parent group. But I recommend turning off the notifications, just because there's so many posts. There's just tens and tens and tens of thousands of people on that site. But using that group to search for what you're looking for. So if you're looking for something about a specific program, or a specific type of learner or something like that. So for example, there's a program called Friends on the Block, which was developed for our readers who have intellectual or cognitive disabilities, but is also used for other readers. So you can find out really specific things by searching the international group. That's a lot. That would be learning a lot about the science of reading. But if you wanted to go even further with your learning, here's some more information. Dr. Pam Kastner is somebody who had a doctorate in reading instruction and also learned that she did not have access to the body of knowledge that we call the science of reading, got access to it, learned a lot of things, has a lot of videos out there for us so that we can learn as well, and has a wakelet of wakelets, just tons and tons of information for us to access. Core Learning has some webinars that we can access, and then there are podcasts such as the Science of Reading podcast from Amplify. The Reading League has branches in various states, and they have different free webinars that are available on YouTube. The Reading League itself, if you want to join that, that's not free, but it's a cost, and then you get access to their journals. You can also pay low cost, like $10 to go. I just paid for the recent webinar about letter learning instruction. They also have a conference each year. And if you want to go really advanced, if you would like to get daily, almost daily emails from researchers talking back and forth about the current research, along with some practitioner voices as well, you can join Spell Talk, which is a listserv, and like I said, you will get a lot of emails with the researchers talking back and forth about current research. Other things you could do is to take the Teaching Reading Sourcebook training this summer, taught by Dr. Sally Krauser, who is in our state and has a lot of expertise about reading and the brain. So definitely access that if you have not been trained in the Teaching Reading Sourcebook yet. And Dr. Arnio is also an expert, and he has helped many dyslexics and others who struggle with reading through his clinic and the education that he gives to us. He has a workshop through the University of Sioux Falls. He taught it this past fall. I don't know when he'll teach it again, but you can access that site to find out. And of course, we always post this on South Dakota Science of Reading Facebook group as well. There are other books, articles, webinars, and trainings that you can access. For example, I also facilitate workshops through the University of Sioux Falls. So if I'm not doing anything this summer, but if you're interested in doing something for graduate credit next school year, I'm planning to offer speech to print chapters 1 through 4 in October, November, speech to print chapters 5 through 8 in January, February, and beneath the surface of words, which I'll talk about on the next slide, in March and April. We are in the Beneath the Surface of Words book study right now, and if you would like to sit in on the next sessions, just get into the South Dakota Science of Reading Facebook group, and then we have the link right in there. So that is a lot of information about the science of reading. But wait, there's more. I do want to touch on two things that I have not yet discussed. One is the role of morphology. So there's something called the triple word form theory that says that we access the orthographic, phonological, and morphological aspects of a word when reading. And there are some folks who believe that we are not giving enough attention to morphology when we're teaching kids to read. And I understand where they're coming from. I tend to agree. I know that, like in my program, which is very good, I will tell the kids to spell a word in guided spelling, and they'll say something like, which O? And then I point to the list of long O spellings under a mnemonic and show them which O. But I don't really talk about why it's that O, where the word came from, and why that O was, for example, maintained in that word. So I recommend, if you're interested in learning more about morphology, accessing Sue Hagelin's book. She's from South Dakota. She lives in South Dakota now, Beneath the Surface of Words. And like I said, you can sit in on her book study. There's her website right there. Now, there are people who take it even further. So Jeffrey and Pete Bowers have come up with something called structured word inquiry. And they argue, or Jeffrey Bowers has argued in some of his writings, that we should teach kids to read using morphology instead of phonics. So that's a different way of looking at things. I was on a call with Pete Bowers recently, and he said he absolutely does believe in orthographic mapping, but we are underestimating the role of morphology in that. So I don't see myself giving up on phonics anytime soon, but I do want to take this structured word and inquiry training next fall and get more information about this to see if I can implement more morphology instruction into my routines without slowing down instruction too much, so that I can still keep accelerating student learning. What about fluency? Some folks say that fluency will come naturally, fluency being the bridge between word level reading and comprehension. Some folks say it will come naturally if the kids can read the words. Others say it's its own skill. I don't know, but I know what works for fluency, and that is software called Reading Plus. Reading Plus is meant for students in grades 3 to 12 and beyond. It's not juvenile. It's very respectful for our older emergent readers, and it has a guided window, and it forces kids to follow along at a certain speed. It goes under their independent rate and then speeds it up, and it works on their silent reading fluency, which is really, I mean, most of the things we read silently on our own. So it works on silent reading fluency. And I have seen great results with this program, both when I used it in Las Vegas and recently here in South Dakota. Last school year, I had 2 students, 4th and 5th graders, use this program with fidelity. I had other students on the program, but not with the fidelity that would be required to see the results. So those students were students with LAPs, and they took the access test after 1 semester using Reading Plus. On the reading subtest of the access test, so remember that it goes 1 through 6, 6 is perfect, 5 is passing. 1 student improved by 1 entire level on the reading subtest of the access test. And another student, the other student went up by 2 entire levels on the access test. Now, I think with the second case, it was focus. The student has had a lot of struggles with focus during his school career so far. And this program forces you to focus. There's a lot of choice built into the program. So it was high interest for the students, and it got good results. What about dyslexia? Well, a lot of what I've told you is going to help your students who have dyslexia. Of course, dyslexia could be its own presentation, and is. We have folks here in South Dakota who are telling us information about dyslexia. I personally recommend accessing South Dakota's information about dyslexia, and then also accessing 2 TED Talks about dyslexia. One is from the perspective of somebody who has dyslexia herself, and one is from more of a research perspective, but they're both very powerful and informational and short. And then we cannot mention dyslexia without mentioning the contributions of Dr. Sally Shaywitz, who wrote Overcoming Dyslexia. It is a pretty comprehensive book about dyslexia. If you are talking to a parent guardian who is concerned about their child and dyslexia, I actually recommend the Motes and Dakin book, Basic Facts About Dyslexia and Other Reading Problems. You can access that on the International Dyslexia site and in their store there. The Shaywitz book took me a few weeks to read. The Basic Facts book took me 2 sittings to read. So it's, if you're somebody who's concerned about your child and you're kind of panicking, that Basic Facts book is going to be more accessible. Remember, the science of reading involves the preponderance of evidence. And I totally feel like they took this phrase from me, but I took it from my jury trial, so that's okay. I'm going to read again this definition of the science of reading that was on one of my first slides from Defining Guide from the Reading League site. The science of reading is a vast interdisciplinary body of scientifically based research about reading and issues related to reading and writing. And they have an asterisk by scientifically based, and then another page of the guide, which again you can access for free, shows what that means, what the study had to show in order to be considered scientifically based, or how it had to be conducted. The research has been conducted over the last 5 years across the world and is derived from thousands of studies conducted in multiple languages. The science of reading has culminated in a preponderance of evidence to inform how proficient reading and writing develop, why some have difficulty, and how we can most effectively assess and teach, and therefore improve student outcomes through prevention of and intervention for reading difficulties. That's the definition. Also remember, the preponderance of evidence shows that you are an excellent educator. You sat through this entire presentation during your free time just to see if it could give you something to help your learners. So anyway, thank you for that, and thank you for all you do. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Just think about what you're doing, and if there's anything that you can tweak based on the evidence that you are aware of that can help your learners, please contact me. This was pretty short, light on references, so it had sometimes people's names, but now when or where they said that, I can give you all of that. I didn't want to get into, then he said this, then Dr. So-and-so responded to this, and then Dr. So-and-so responded to that, but I do have all that information. Also, remember, I'd love to know what you have used curriculum-wise that has worked or not worked for your learners. And if you have any questions, or if I have made an error in my presentation, please let me know at that internet address, that web email address. So thank you very much for your time, and please have a great remainder of the school year, you and your learners.